purpose for today's briefing is to address you on the just ended parliamentary primaries of the New Patriotic Party. So we will be sharing our observations on the just ended parliamentary primaries of the New Patriotic Party with you, and we will be sharing with you some policy alternatives which have been announced by the flag bearer and leader of the National Democratic Congress, and explain to you why John Dramani Mahama is the leader Ghana needs now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the media, I welcome you once again to another edition of the NDC's weekly press briefing. Today, we shall share with you our observations on the just ended parliamentary primaries of the New Patriotic Party, which took place over the weekend and which was characterized by obscene violence and unprecedented levels of vote buying and showboating. As you may be aware, the entire primaries was conducted in an environment where those who could afford the biggest pecuniary or monetary inducements carried the day. Huge amounts of money, I repeat, huge amounts of money. In some cases, 6,000 Ghana cedis per delegate, 5,000 Ghana cedis per delegate, 4,000 Ghana cedis per delegate, and so on, exchange hands in the full glare of the media. While material gifts such as refrigerators, flat screen televisions, motorbikes, tricycles, and other valuables were distributed to bribe and induce party delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, how a party which few years ago was begging for money from kayais and street hawkers, how a party which few years ago toured the world with a cup in hand begging for money, can afford this level of opulence and ostentation 3.5 years into coming into office, after coming into office, sorry, speaks volumes of the endemic corruption and thievery that has engulfed the Akufo-Addo government. Because certainly, the money we saw them distributing, the flat screens, the motorcycles, the cars, and other valuables we saw them distributing, is not money, they had before they came into office. Clearly, this is money they have made in the last 3.5 years. And that should give every well-meaning Ghanaian legitimate cause for concern, because they are the very people who few years ago, when they were in opposition, were struggling to pay their utility bills at their party headquarters. They were soliciting for funds from kayais. They went to China and other parts of the country with a bowl in their hand, led by Dr. Bawumia, begging for money. And so if today they can be distributing as much as 5,000 Ghana cedis per delegate and all these valuables, then we must ask them how they came by this wealth. Another disturbing feature of the NPP's parliamentary primaries was violence, which took center stage throughout the country. Some contestants unleashed hoodlums belonging to the numerous vigilante groups affiliated to the NPP against their opponents. And these hoodlums and hooligans, belong to groups, like I've said, which were formed under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo. We also saw the use of state security to bully and brutalize opponents in some areas. Party members engaged in free-for-all exchange of blows in confirmation of the violent reputation that the NPP has become known for under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo. Ladies and gentlemen, it is this same culture of violence, thuggery, and lawlessness that led to the unlawful, callous, and senseless demolition and destruction of properties belonging to the Nigerian High Commission in Accra this weekend, in violation of international law. You see, even though the practice of vote buying the practice or electoral violence is not new in our body politics. The high level of violence, vote buying, showboating, and the wanton display of opulence we witness is nothing like we have seen in the history of this country. And so we are not saying that, oh, this is the first time there will be vote buying or violence in the internal elections of a political party or in our body politics in general. We will be hypocritical to say so. This is not new. And on both sides, we have seen instances of vote buying and electoral violence. We, as a political party, under the leadership of John Dramani Mahama, have committed ourselves to peace. And that is why in our just ended primaries, and in fact in all our internal elections, we work closely with the Ghana Police Service with regards to law enforcement and ensure that everything was peaceful and orderly. You didn't see our party supporters burning ties, burning offices. You didn't see our party supporters with guns and machetes, fighting like you saw on Saturday during the parliamentary primaries of the New Patriotic Party. Again, like I said, we will not be hypocritical about it. The practice of vote buying is not new. But the alarming level of vote buying and opulence we saw this time in the NPP is unprecedented. And I'm sure you in the media who covered that primaries will agree with us that we have never seen this level of ostentation in our body politics before. And that should give every democracy-loving Ghanaian genuine cause for concern. Even more bizarre, ladies and gentlemen, were reports by you in the media of how social distancing, wearing of face masks, and other critical COVID-19 preventive protocols were defied and thrown to the dogs as delegates congregated in their hundreds, mingled and interacted, including wild jubilations in the full glare of the police, who are supposed to enforce the law. It is sad, cruel, and reprehensible for President Akufo-Addo, who promulgated the law, that is EI 64, which has led to the arrest, prosecution, and imprisonment of pastors and other Ghanaians, to turn around and supervise the flagrant violation of the same law by his party officials and members with the impunity we saw during their Saturday parliamentary primaries. This, ladies and gentlemen, is unacceptable. This is abominable, particularly at a time church and mosque gatherings have been restricted to a maximum of 100 attendees and a duration of 1 hour. And at a time, Ghanaians who are found not to be wearing face masks are being subjected to all manner of degrading and inhumane treatments. The recklessness and lawlessness displayed by the NPP during their just ended parliamentary primaries, coupled with the selective application of the law on COVID-19 preventive protocols by our law enforcement agencies, make the imprisonment of pastors and Ghanaians who were convicted for breaching public gathering restrictions under EI 64 totally unjustifiable and unfair. And I think I must explain this for emphasis. We are all trying to fight against the spread of the dreaded coronavirus in this country. And so we are all making sacrifices, sacrificing our freedoms, freedom of religion, and so on, adhering to the precautionary protocols which have been outlined by the Ghana Health Service and the World Health Organization to ensure that we keep safe and protect, and prevent the spread of the virus. As a result, President Akufo-Addo has promulgated a law, EI 64, which has imposed restrictions on public gatherings and all that. Even though the restrictions have been reviewed, there are still restrictions. For example, we are not allowed to have more than 100 people in attendance in our churches and mosques and so on. And our pastors, our imams, are abiding by these things. Pastors who were found to have breached these guidelines right from the outset were arrested, prosecuted, and some of them have been jailed. As we speak, people are in jail for breaching COVID-19 preventive protocols. As we speak, churches cannot gather, people cannot go to the mosque and pray like they would want to do because of these restrictions. And you, the same man who promulgated this law, President Akufo-Addo, who doubles as the leader of the New Patriotic Party, supervises this recklessness, lawlessness, and impunity on the part of his party officials and members, where these COVID-19 protocols were thrown to the dogs. Nobody cared about social distancing. People took off their face masks and all that in the full glare of the police. Yesterday, some of us thought that the president was going to use his address to the nation to at least reprimand his party for this, indiscipline and lawlessness. But he didn't. Showing clearly that what happened was with his tacit approval. And we are saying that this is not fair. This is not justifiable. People have gone to jail for this. And we believe that the media and all of us must hold President Akufo-Addo and the New Patriotic Party to this same standard. Either than that, then we have no business imprisoning people in this country. We must as well release the pastors and the innocent citizens who have been imprisoned as a result of the enforcement of this very law. Because nobody is above the law in this country. The NPP is not above the law. So you cannot have one set of laws for the New Patriotic Party, their officials and their delegates, and have a different set of laws for pastors, imams, and all that. This is an insult to all of us. And President Akufo-Addo should be ashamed for supervising this lawlessness, which, by the way, endangers all of us and jeopardizes our collective fight against the dreaded coronavirus. Ladies and gentlemen, actions, they say, speak louder than words. The flagrant violation of COVID-19 precautionary protocols provided under EI 64 by officials and members of the New Patriotic Party, and the President's tacit approval of same, make nonsense of our collective fight against the dreaded coronavirus pandemic, and shows that President Akufo-Addo and the NPP are not committed to Ghana's COVID fight. Friends from the media, we must hasten to add that the results that emerged out of the NPP primaries, where as many as 40 incumbent members of parliament lost their seats, reflects the dissatisfaction of NPP supporters and Ghanaians at large with the abysmal performance of the Akufo-Addo government. In all, we have counted over 40 incumbent MPs, including 11 parliamentary select committee chairmen, 4 parliamentary select committee vice chairmen, 2 regional ministers, and 1 minister of state, plus 3 deputy ministers of state who lost their seats in these primaries. The defeat of so many incumbent members of parliament, especially those in parliamentary leadership and in government, shows that the NPP delegates voted for change and passed an overwhelming vote of no confidence in their own government. Our checks have revealed that many first-time MPs lost their seats because no developmental projects have been undertaken in their constituencies in the last 3.5 years. The $1 million per constituency we were promised has become a pipe dream. And so these first-time MPs could not undertake any significant developmental projects in their constituencies for the benefit of their constituents. Even the local, the common fund is in arrears for more than 2 quarters. And so that non-performance of the Akufo-Addo government is what affected most of these first-time incumbent MPs per our checks. And that is a testament to the failure, the monumental failure, I should say, of President Akufo-Addo and his government. Now his NPP supporters themselves are rating those in parliamentary leadership who are working closely with him very poorly. They have passed a vote of no confidence in them. They have voted for change. And it is very clear that even NPP members and supporters are not happy with the performance of President Akufo-Addo and his government. So, like I've already indicated, that trend, that tsunami, through which several incumbents lost their seats, is a clear indication that even NPP supporters are generally unhappy with the abysmal performance of their own government and have invited the rest of Ghanaians to reject this non-performing, nepotistic, and corrupt Akufo-Addo government. It is pretty obvious, even to the uninitiated, that but for the undemocratic imposition of some 65 incumbent members of parliament by the powers that be in the NPP, the situation would have been worse. Don't forget that they had the primaries in just 101 constituencies. In about 65 constituencies, there were no primaries because they imposed some senior officials of government on the people and ensured that there was no contest. So those 65 people went unopposed. Now, if that had not been done, ladies and gentlemen, we are very sure that about 60 to 70% of incumbent MPs would have lost their seats because they, together with President Akufo-Addo, have failed the people. And that is why their own party supporters are beginning to speak up. We in the NDC are not surprised at the turn of events because we have always known that President Akufo-Addo and his corrupt government have underperformed, having fulfilled just 14% of their 631 promises in their 2016 manifesto and are only marking time to an overwhelming rejection by the Ghanaian electorate on 7 December 2020. By the way, we are still waiting for the Minister of Information, Kwadwo Oppong-Krome's main response to the 3rd edition of our weekly press briefing, where we assessed their 2016 manifesto and demonstrated to you that their performance has been woefully abysmal. They have fulfilled only 14% of their 631 promises, and they have failed to fulfill over 545 of their manifesto promises. And we demonstrated that to you with facts. Thereafter, we saw him address some half-hearted, wishy-washy, statement, ostensibly to respond to what we did. We were told that that was supposed to be a preliminary response and that they were going to, respond to our press conference in good detail in the ensuing, days. But we are yet to hear from them. We are challenging them to respond and to defend this theory of visions being different from promises, and we adding promises to their manifesto promises in that so-called main response we are all expecting.